I would say one of the biggest psyops that exist is that they say cops' number one target is African Americans. That may have been true of the past, but because of so many high-profile cases like Rodney King, George Floyd, at this point in time, psychopathic cops' favorite victim is not African Americans, even if they're vulnerable and messed up. Simply because there's been so many times where cops have gone on blast, right? The number one victim in society of cops, where they're really going to be savages and brutalize, kill, break bones, is the mentally ill and homeless. Nobody gives this attention, because like in the 80s, we made it okay to kill homeless people. Like we made it okay that they don't get any health care, that they just wander the streets. And, given the cops are like psychopaths, they operate a lot like serial killers. They like serial killers, pick them to torture them. Like if you have a sociopath, they want to kill a homeless person, they want to rape a prostitute who's homeless on drugs. Um, the same is true of the police because a lot of them are psychopaths. So, whenever you hear of these cases where somebody got their arm snapped in half or they bashed their head in the concrete and they died and they didn't even bother to try to cover it up because they knew nothing would happen and no one would care, it's going to be a mentally unstable, homeless person. Yeah, every time. So, I feel like they don't mention that because if you want to know what I think we use the homeless and mentally ill as a pressure valve for psychopathy. It is noted that the Illuminati is trying to label me mentally ill, and I think this is because they are aware of our social structure, where at the very bottom are mentally ill people who are prey to psychopaths, right? So I don't think it's a coincidence that, I mean, they don't have to do this, but they try to make it true that I'm a schizophrenic, even though I'm obviously logical, well dressed, intelligent, probably smarter than you, more coherent. Other than some things I say that are hard to believe, like our elites are literally Satanists. Like it's true though. They are, right? So other than saying some things that may be a little bit hard to believe, if you're not paying attention to what's going on in society, like the elites are Satanists, which they are. Um, I'm otherwise a high functioning, logical person, well dressed, intelligent. There's no signs of any thought disorder or intellectual handicap. Um, but people who do actually have those problems, so that's why they get labeled mentally ill. They're the number one prey for psychopaths in this country, especially low power psychopaths like cops. Cops don't have any power, right? Their power is entirely an illusion. They're a pawn. But the kind of people who would like pick off to assault and abuse people always target the mentally ill, right? And I feel like I'm going to be real with you. I think in the 80s they made a plan to first erode liberalism by designating mentally unwell people as victims. They exist only to be victims of disgruntled psychopaths who are lower power. And I think it was kind of deliberately done. So we went from like escalating liberalism and progressivism to reversing it in that moment when we decided we were going to make an untouchable class, which is mostly made up of mentally ill people and some drug addicts, where anything could happen to them and it's okay. And because there's so many psychopaths and cops, the worst cases of human rights abuse will always be this class. And I feel like the reason they bring attention to cop abuse of African American community, even though it's obviously substantially lower than this community, is to make us not aware that's what this community exists for. It's almost like they're invisible and untouchable, like the untouchables in India, the mentally ill and people with substantial drug addiction, where they exist and it's clear they're being preyed upon by police and random psychopaths, but we're pretending like alternatively it's not real and it's also their fault. These two lies we tell ourselves. It's their fault and it's not real, right? And I think the elites in the 80s wanted to not only screw them over to not have to pay any health care, but to deliberately create an untouchable class where anything can be done to them and it's okay and nobody will give a shit. Because that would be the first step to making their feudal system real. So they can first make a untouchable underclass made of people who have severe mental health problems, are unhoused from them, and severe drug addiction, and you normalize that, and also normalize cultural myths. It's all their fault. Who gives a shit? They deserve it. Then you can start making the rest of it real, right? And I think that's why it was done. And I think the reason they promote only awareness of African Americans and cops because they that exists to hide you from the real victims, which are this class at the very, very bottom. That they started to deliberately create and expand in the 80s. And I think a lot of stuff like promoting the opioid crisis, they're trying to put more and more people in this class so they can be a pressure valve from the rest of this, right? And as long as they're better than that, then they feel good, right? Yeah, I can't. It's just this repeating theme. If cops are doing weird violence to somebody that's just like next level that they would never do on anyone, it's always somebody who's homeless, severely mentally ill, or unhoused. Combination of those. And the same is true of the Gen Pop. The psychopaths will target those people. And I think that's the utility of them trying to put me in this class is there because they know this class exists. It's like the untouchables in India. Our untouchables are the mentally ill and people with severe drug addictions. And so they try to cast people in that class to exist only to be a focal point for antisocial predators and to make you feel grateful for your station, even if your station is garbage and they're making it worse and worse by the day.